Jackson Lane balanced the silver tray on one hand while nudging the penthouse door open with his shoulder, praying the glass of orange juice didn't spill. His back ached, his tie was crooked, and he was already late picking up his daughter from school, but the tip from a penthouse suite might cover dinner tonight and maybe even a pizza night this weekend if he was lucky. "Room service," he called into the suite, voice tired but polite. The place was quiet, too quiet for a suite that cost more per night than what he made in a month. He stepped in cautiously, eyes scanning the sleek marble floors, the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, and the faint scent of expensive perfume in the air. Then she appeared. Barefoot, hair damp from a shower, wrapped in a white hotel robe that fell just off one shoulder, she looked like someone who belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine, not pacing around a hotel suite like she'd lost something. "Oh," she said, stopping mid-step. "You're not who I was expecting." Jackson blinked. "Sorry, ma'am, just your breakfast." She tilted her head. "You're not the usual guy. What's your name?" "Jackson," he said, placing the tray gently on the table. "Jackson Lane." She walked over, curious eyes flicking across his face. "I'm Madeline Elridge." Of course she was. The name was on the order slip, but hearing it from her lips made it feel different. "Nice to meet you," he said, backing toward the door. "Enjoy your wait." He stopped. "You okay?" she asked, folding her arms. "You look like you've slept in your car." He didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You have a kid?" Jackson froze. "How did you?" She pointed to the crayon drawing sticking awkwardly out of his back pocket. He glanced at it and sighed. "Yeah, Ava, she's 6. Madeline smiled, softening. "She drew you with a cape." Jackson gave a quiet laugh. "She thinks I'm a superhero. You look like one who could use a nap." He didn't know what to say, so he nodded once and turned to leave. "Jackson," he paused again. "I'm having dinner here tonight," she said, a playful glint in her voice. "You should deliver that too," he raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure hotel protocol doesn't allow special requests like that. I'll pay extra." Her tone was light, but there was something behind it. Interest, amusement, something he didn't have the energy to name. He gave a hesitant nod. "Sure. I'll bring your dinner." As he left the suite and the door clicked shut behind him, Jackson shook his head, trying not to think about her smile. He didn't have time for this. He was a single dad working double shifts just to keep the lights on. Women like her didn't belong in his world. But when he picked up Ava that afternoon and she asked what made him smile like that, he didn't have an answer. That night, Jackson stood outside the penthouse again, this time with a tray of grilled salmon, risotto, and a bottle of red wine that probably cost more than his car. He took a breath and knocked. Madeline answered, dressed in something that looked soft and expensive, a deep blue dress hugging her curves. Her hair was dry now, softly curled, makeup subtle but flawless. "You actually came," she said, stepping back. "You actually requested me," he replied. She laughed, rich and warm. "Touché." He set the tray down, unsure if he should leave or stay. "Sit with me," she said, already pouring a second glass of wine. He blinked. "I'm on the clock. I won't tell." He hesitated, but she was already handing him a glass. "Just 10 minutes," he said, sitting across from her. They ate. They talked, about nothing and everything. She asked about Ava, about how long he'd worked here, about what he used to do before life got complicated. "I used to work in construction," he said. "Had my own little business before things fell apart." "Your wife?" she asked gently. She left when Ava was 2, said family life wasn't for her. Madeline's face softened. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "We're doing okay. Ava's everything." She watched him with something like admiration. "You're a good dad." He didn't know what to say to that. No one ever said things like that to him. Not anymore. He stood, setting the glass down. "I should go before my manager comes looking." Madeline stood too, walking him to the door. "I'm here for a few more days," she said. "You should come back, Madeline." "I'm not asking you to be anything but yourself, Jackson." That was the problem. Himself wasn't enough, but he nodded anyway. The next night she asked for him again, and the night after that they talked more, laughed more. She asked about his dreams. He told her about the house he used to want to build, the business he hoped to reopen one day. She never judged, never pitied. She listened, and looked at him like he wasn't invisible. By the 4th night, she opened the door and just smiled. "You hungry?" he laughed. "Starving." She had 2 plates waiting on the coffee table, and they ate on the floor like old friends. "You know," she said after a while, I didn't come here for business. I came to get away from people trying to control my life. He looked at her. Who would try to control someone like you? She gave a sad smile. People who have money invested in me, because I'm not just Madeline Elridge, I'm the majority owner of Elridge Holdings. Jackson stared. Wait, you're a millionaire, she nodded, several times over. He sat back. I didn't mean to hide it, she said. I just liked the way you looked at me, like I was just a person, not a transaction. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, you are just a person, one who eats too much risotto. She laughed, relief washing over her face. I don't care how much money you have, he said seriously. But I have a daughter. I can't afford to play games. I'm not playing. He looked at her, really looked at her. Neither am I. They sat in silence, the kind that felt safe. Then she touched his hand. Stay a little longer. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just stayed. Madeline's suite was dark except for the glow of the city lights spilling in through the glass. Jackson sat on the edge of the low sectional, the quiet between them thick with something neither of them had named yet. She turned her head toward the window, her voice low. I used to watch this skyline from a boardroom on the 82nd floor. It always felt like the city belonged to someone else. Jackson followed her gaze, the glittering skyline stretching far beyond what he could ever touch. It still feels that way to me. Don't let it, she said. You belong anywhere you decide to stand. He didn't respond, not because he disagreed, but because the weight of hearing it from her made something shift inside him. Madeline reached for the wine bottle and poured more into his glass without asking. Let me take you somewhere tomorrow. His brow lifted. Where? I'm not telling. Just wear something that doesn't have a name tag on it. I don't think I even own anything you'd call formal. She gave him a sideways glance. Then I guess I'll have to fix that. I can't afford. I didn't say you had to pay. Jackson leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Madeline, I don't take handouts. It's not a handout, it's an invitation. He hesitated, watching her. Who else will be there? No one that matters. He didn't answer right away. Then, I'll have to find someone to watch Ava. I know someone, she said quickly. My assistant's cousin lives here. She's a certified teacher and she runs a weekend program for kids. I already checked. Jackson blinked. You already checked? I figured you'd say yes. His mouth tilted in something close to amusement. You're a piece of work, and you're impossible to plan for, so 7 o'clock, I'll send a car. She didn't wait for a yes. She just stood, walked toward the bedroom, and tossed one last look over her shoulder. Don't be late. The next evening, Jackson stood in front of the mirror in a charcoal suit that had been delivered to his apartment in a sleek garment bag with no return address. The fabric was smooth, the fit perfect. He didn't ask how she guessed his measurements, probably the same way she seemed to know what made him nervous before he even said it. Ava twirled in her socks behind him, arms raised like a ballerina. You look like a prince. He crouched and kissed her forehead. I'll be back before bedtime, okay? She nodded solemnly. Will she be there? Jackson blinked. Who? The lady who makes you smile weird, he laughed. Yeah, she'll be there. Ava nodded again, satisfied, and ran off to show the babysitter her drawing of a unicorn with a crown. The ride was silent, the car sleek and black, the interior stitched in leather that smelled like money. Jackson's palms were damp against his thighs by the time they pulled up to a low-lit building in Tribeca with no sign on the door. Inside, a private dining room was set for two. Candles flickered on the table. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Madeline stood near the window, wearing a deep plum gown that shimmered beneath the chandeliers. Her hair was swept back, a single diamond resting at her throat. She turned when he entered, and for a moment the air left his lungs. You clean up, she said, eyes trailing over him, way too well. He adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. This place looks like it costs more than my rent. It does. He raised a brow, she smiled. You're worth it. Dinner passed in waves of conversation that peeled back more layers her childhood in boarding schools, the pressure to live up to a name she didn't choose, the board members who smiled to her face and undermined her every move. I don't want to be a figurehead, she said, slicing into her steak. I want to build something real, but they think my last name is all I have. Jackson leaned back in his chair. Then prove them wrong. She looked at him. Says the guy who won't take a free suit without arguing. I didn't say I wouldn't return it. Don't. He didn't push it. Not tonight. After dessert, she led him up a narrow staircase to a rooftop terrace. The city stretched below them, quiet in its chaos. "This is my favorite place in the whole city," she said. "No one ever comes up here." The breeze tugged at his lapels. "It's peaceful." She stepped closer. "You make it feel safe." He turned. "Madeline, I know this is fast," she said, "but I don't want to pretend I don't feel it." "Not after everything." He didn't speak. He couldn't, so she leaned in. The kiss wasn't practiced or perfect. It was cautious at first, then deepened with something that felt like relief. Like two people who had been holding their breath at the same time, finally remembering how to exhale. When they pulled apart, she didn't step back. "You're not just a man who delivers food," she said. "You're the first person who's ever looked at me like I'm more than a brand." He touched her face. "And you're the first person who's ever made me feel like I belong in a place like this." She tilted her head. "You do." He didn't argue, but he also didn't notice the photographer standing 3 buildings away, lens pointed directly at them, shutter clicking silently into the night. The article dropped 2 days later. Jackson saw it by accident and opened tab on a co-worker's phone left unattended on the staff break table. The headline was impossible to miss. Heiress Elridge's rooftop rendezvous with mystery man, new romance or scandal in the making. There was a photo. Grainy, zoomed in, but unmistakable. His hand brushing her cheek, her face tilted toward his. The city glowing behind them like a stage. He nearly dropped the tray in his hands. By the time he reached the staff locker room, his manager was already waiting. "Jackson, my office." Now, the moment the door clicked shut behind them, the manager didn't even sit. "You didn't think to mention you were getting cozy with a guest who owns half the damn city." Jackson crossed his arms. "It wasn't like that." "Oh, it wasn't." The manager threw a printout onto the desk. "Because this photo says otherwise. That's you in a private dining room that doesn't even take reservations unless your last name's carved into a building." Jackson stared at the image. "She invited me." "Well, now the hotel's been dragged into a tabloid mess and corporate's breathing down my neck. You're suspended until further notice." His voice dropped. "You're lucky I'm not firing you outright." Jackson didn't argue. He just nodded once, turned, and walked out. He didn't stop at his locker, didn't explain to anyone. He just left. Outside, the cold hit him like a slap. His phone buzzed, but he didn't check it. Not until he was on the subway, staring blankly at the underground blur. 17 missed calls, all from one name, Madeline. He didn't answer. When he finally got home, Ava was sitting cross-legged on the floor painting a cardboard castle, her babysitter reading nearby. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Daddy, I made your room in the castle." He crouched beside her. "You did." She pointed to a small tower drawn in marker. "You get the tallest one, because you're the strongest." He kissed the top of her head. "Thanks, baby." Madeline's calls kept coming. That night, he sat at the edge of Ava's bed long after she'd fallen asleep, staring at the phone in his hand. He didn't want to hear her voice, not yet. Not when everything inside him felt like it was splitting down the middle. The next morning, she showed up at his door. He opened it without a word. She looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a rush, coat thrown over a blouse that probably cost more than his rent. "Why didn't you pick up?" He stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind him. "Because I lost my job." Her face fell. "I didn't know it would get out. I didn't even tell. It doesn't matter who told. It happened because I let myself believe someone like you could exist in my world without breaking it." She flinched. "You think I wanted this? That I wanted us to be splashed across screens like we're a product launch?" He didn't answer. "I tried to stop it, Jackson. I called my PR team, I threatened the paper, but it was already out. You think I'm not angry too? That I don't hate how everything I touch turns into something staged?" He looked away. Ava's school called. They asked why reporters were waiting outside. Madeline's breath caught. "Oh God. I've worked every day to keep her life normal, safe. And in one night, that was gone. I didn't mean for this to touch her. It did." Silence stretched between them. Then, barely audible, "I never wanted to hurt you." He nodded once, jaw tight. "But you did." She stepped closer. "Let me fix it." "You can't." He didn't wait for her to answer. He walked back inside and closed the door. Days passed. The phone stopped ringing. The reporters faded, but so did everything else. Jackson tried to pick up shifts at a nearby diner, anything to cover the bills, but word had spread. No one wanted the guy from the tabloids. One evening, as he packed up Ava's lunch for school, she tugged gently on his sleeve. "Are you sad because of the lady?" He paused. "A little. I liked her." He smiled faintly. "I know, maybe you should tell her." He didn't reply. The next morning, he found an envelope beneath his apartment door. No name. Just thick, cream-colored paper and one folded letter inside. "Jackson, I've never had to fight for something real before. I've always had people fighting over who gets to own me, not love me. But I can't lose you because the world wants to turn us into a headline. I've stepped down from the Elridge board. I've sold my shares. Not because I'm running, but because I'm choosing a life that's mine. One I control. One where I don't have to watch the man I care about stand in the shadows so I can shine. I'm starting something new. It's not flashy and it won't make the papers, but it will matter. And I want you to be part of it, if you still want me." He read it twice, then again. That night, he stayed awake long after Ava had gone to sleep, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. Because for the first time in years, someone hadn't just seen him, they chose him, and that changed everything. The new address was scrawled on the bottom of the letter in soft blue ink. Jackson stared at it for a long time before folding the page carefully and sliding it into his jacket pocket. He didn't go that night. Instead, he spent the next 2 days watching Ava glue popsicle sticks into a miniature treehouse, thinking about what it meant when someone gave up everything they knew for something uncertain. He'd spent so long building walls to protect her, his daughter, his life, that the idea of letting someone in felt like inviting chaos. But Madeline hadn't brought chaos. She'd brought clarity. And then, when the world turned upside down, she'd chosen to stand beside him anyway. By the third morning, he was standing outside a small building in Soho. The studio space looked nothing like the glass towers she used to occupy. The windows were open, paint-splattered drop cloths hung over wooden frames, and sunlight poured through the panes onto raw concrete floors. A brass plaque by the door read, "Elridge and Lane, design, build, believe." He hesitated, then walked inside. She was at the far end of the room, barefoot, rolling blueprints across a long table. Her sweater sleeves were pushed up past her elbows, her hair pulled into a loose knot. There was a streak of graphite across one cheek. She looked up, startled. Then her eyes widened. "You came. I read your letter." She stepped out from behind the table slowly, as if afraid sudden movement would send him running. So, he glanced around the space. "Elridge and Lane," she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I wasn't sure if you'd say yes, but I didn't say no." A beat passed. "You really left everything behind," she nodded. "The company didn't define me, it just distracted me from figuring out what did." He stepped closer. "And this is what you want." "I want something real. I want to build homes that matter, spaces where people like you and Ava can feel like they belong. I have the capital, you have the vision." He studied her face. "What if this doesn't work? Then we build again. And again." "Until it does," he exhaled slowly. "I don't know anything about running a business on this scale. You'll learn, and I'll be here, every step." She reached for his hand. "I don't want to be someone who only shows up when it's easy. I want to be the person who fights with you." "For you," he didn't look at their hands, he looked at her. "Then you need to meet Ava properly." Her eyes lit up. "I'd like that." "Today? No," he said. "Tonight, come for dinner." She blinked. "You cook." "I make a mean grilled cheese," she laughed. "Then I'll bring dessert." That evening, Ava opened the door before Jackson could reach for the knob. Her hair was braided, cheeks dusted with flour from helping in the kitchen. "You're the lady from the castle," she said. Madeline knelt to her level. "That's me." Ava tilted her head. "Do you like grilled cheese?" "I love grilled cheese." "Okay," she said seriously, "but Daddy burns the crust sometimes." "That's my secret ingredient," Jackson called from the kitchen. They settled around the table, the small apartment filled with the scent of butter and tomato soup, mismatched plates, and the sound of Ava's endless stories. Madeline listened to all of them, never pretending, never patronizing. She asked questions, remembered names, laughed when Ava impersonated her teacher's sneeze. After dinner, they sat on the floor building towers from wooden blocks. Ava's eyelids began to droop halfway through a dramatic retelling of a playground argument, and Jackson scooped her up, tucking her into bed with her favorite blanket. When he returned to the living room, Madeline was standing by the window, arms folded, quietly watching the street below. "She's amazing," she said. "She is." When he joined her, she leaned into his shoulder. "I've never felt more like myself than I do here." He glanced down. Even without the penthouse suites and gala invitations, especially without them, he wrapped an arm around her waist. "You know this won't always be simple. There will be long days, tight budgets, failed permits." She looked up at him. "And there will be late nights and Ava's school plays and a front porch on a house we designed together. I'm not scared of hard. I'm scared of meaningless." He kissed her then, not like the rooftop kiss, not like the ones that came from tension or adrenaline. This one was quiet, certain. When he pulled back, she smiled. "So, Lane and Elridge officially breaks ground in the spring." "Actually," he said, "it's Elridge and Lane." She raised an eyebrow. "You're letting me go first." "You already did." The next months passed in a blur of sawdust and sunrise site visits. Jackson taught Madeline how to read foundation plans. She taught him how to navigate investors without selling his soul. They hired a small team, mostly locals who needed second chances. They leased a modest office space next to a community garden. And slowly, the blueprint of a life started to take shape. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony of their first finished home, a modest, sunlit space for a single mother and her two sons, Ava stood proudly beside Madeline, holding the scissors with both hands. Jackson stood behind them, hand resting on Madeline's back, watching her speak into the microphone with a confidence that had nothing to do with headlines or net worth. "This isn't just a house," she said. "It's proof that you can choose a different ending. One where love builds the walls and hope fills the rooms." The crowd applauded. Jackson leaned in and whispered, "You're really good at this." She turned, eyes shining. "So are you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava tugged at Madeline's sleeve. "Can we build a tree house next?" Madeline grinned. "Only if I get the tallest tower," Ava considered. "Okay, but Daddy gets the slide." It wasn't the skyline, it wasn't the penthouse, but it was theirs. And for the first time, Jackson didn't feel like he was delivering someone else's dream. He was living his. Jackson stood at the edge of the empty lot on West Mulberry Street, his boots planted in the churned-up soil, the early summer breeze lifting the edges of the blueprints in his hands. The street was quiet, save for the low hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. Behind him, the new sign gleamed in fresh paint. Elridge and Lane Community Build Initiative. The site would become 3 single-family homes designed for working families, people who didn't have stock portfolios or trust funds, but needed a place where their lives could root and grow. They'd broken ground just after the ribbon-cutting ceremony weeks ago, and now the foundation outlines were visible in chalk and stakes. Madeline stepped out of the temporary trailer office, her phone pressed to her ear, but her eyes already finding him. She ended the call as she walked over, adjusting her sunglasses as the wind caught her skirt. "I just got off with the zoning board," she said, shielding her eyes. "They approved the revised plans for the rooftop gardens." Jackson looked down at the sketches. "You really think people will use them?" "I know they will." She tucked her hair behind her ear. "We're not just building houses, Jackson, we're building lives." He folded the papers and handed them back. "You ever think about how crazy this all is?" She tilted her head. "You mean how we went from rooftop scandal to co-founders of a construction company?" He gave a short laugh. "Exactly that." Madeline glanced toward the street where a school bus rolled by. "Sometimes I think about how fast it all happened. But then I remember that every good thing in my life showed up when I stopped waiting for it to make sense." They walked toward the trailer, Jackson carrying the plans, Madeline sliding her arm into his. Inside, Ava sat cross-legged at a small desk, coloring a poster for the community picnic they were hosting next weekend. She looked up and waved a glue stick. "I added glitter to the sun, now it looks like it's magic." Madeline crouched beside her. "That's perfect." The sun should always be magic. Jackson leaned against the wall, watching the two of them. It was a view he never expected to call his life, a woman who saw through the noise and a daughter who now had more than just stability. She had joy. Later that week, the 3 of them stood in the middle of a nearly finished living room. The drywall was up, the cabinets had been installed, and shafts of golden light streamed through massive windows onto the newly sanded floors. "Feels different when you know who's going to live here," Madeline said, touching the smooth edge of the kitchen island. Jackson nodded. "The Ortiz family, 2 kids, both under 7. He's a subway conductor, she's a paramedic." "They've never had more than 1 bedroom," Madeline whispered. "And now they'll have a home with a yard." Ava twirled in the open space, her laughter echoing through the empty rooms. "Can we build a secret door in our next house?" Madeline grinned at her. "Only if you help me design it." Jackson looked at them, then at the beams overhead. "I think we can make it happen." On the night of the community picnic, the lot was filled with laughter, folding tables, and the smell of grilled corn and sizzling hot dogs. Local musicians played acoustic sets under strings of Edison bulbs. Children ran through the grass with painted faces and sticky hands. Madeline stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Ava play tag with a group of kids. Jackson handed her a lemonade and nodded toward the kids. "She's finally letting go." Madeline took a sip, her gaze soft. "So are you," he leaned in, voice low. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You didn't need me to do it. You needed someone to remind you could." He traced a line down her arm with his finger. "You did more than remind me. You made me believe again." She turned to face him. "I love you." Jackson didn't hesitate. "I love you too." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, her breath caught. "Before you say anything," he said carefully, "this isn't about grand gestures or proving anything to the world. It's about building something that lasts. Not just homes, us." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant gold band flanked by 2 tiny diamonds. "Will you marry me?" Madeline's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes were already shining. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The crowd around them erupted into cheers. Ava raced over and threw her arms around both of them, yelling, "Is this the part where we get cake?" Madeline laughed, pulling her close. "Absolutely." 3 months later, they were married in a small garden behind the first house they built together. The Ortiz family had moved in just 2 days before and offered their new yard for the ceremony. The space was strung with lights, wildflowers blooming everywhere, and neighbors from every block showed up, bringing food, hugs, and music. Ava walked down the aisle ahead of Madeline, holding a bouquet of daisies and wearing a crown of ivy she'd made herself. Jackson waited beneath a wooden arch he and Madeline had built together, hands clasped, heart steady. When she reached him, Madeline whispered, "This is the most beautiful place I've ever stood." He kissed her hand. "Because you're standing in it." They recited vows they'd written themselves, promises not of wealth or glamour, but of patience, of truth, of choosing each other in every ordinary moment. After the ceremony, they danced barefoot in the grass while Ava twirled between them, her laughter carrying through the night like music. They didn't have a private jet or a ballroom, but they had each other, a daughter with glitter on her cheeks, and a life that felt more luxurious than anything money could buy. And when the stars came out, Jackson looked at the woman he'd once delivered room service to and thought, "This is what it means to come home."